Rachel.
And I'm Kelly.
And this is What You Should Read,
the podcast where we should all over our books.
Today is the best episode ever. We have an amazing guest. Angie Kim will be joining us on the podcast later. She's the author of Miracle Creek, which is a book we all loved and that recently came out in paperback. So we're super excited to talk to Angie. But first, Rachel, what are you reading this week?
Okay, I am super excited about what I'm reading because it's an e-arc I got from NetGalley. And the book doesn't even come out until November, so I just feel really special that I'm reading it. It's called Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellfleur. And it's a really cute story so far. I mean, I'm not very far into it, but it's sort of a not explicit but implied Pride and Prejudice retelling. So going back to episode 2. And it's about a woman who was set up on a blind date with this other woman and it did not go well. But the other woman was so, sick of her brother setting her up on dates because the brother is the one who set them up and he's the coworker of the other woman. So she tells him it went great to get him off her back. And so he says to his coworker, hey, I heard you had a great time on the date. She's like, what? So, and then the other woman, the sister, decides she wants to keep fake dating her. So it's sort of a fake relationship, Pride and Prejudice, Bridget Jones style type of thing. And it's really fun. So I'm excited to find out what happens.
Oh, that sounds cute. Thanks, NetGalley, for the arc. Kelly, what are you reading?
I am reading The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett because I was very tired of being the one of us who hadn't read it. So I am about a third of the way in. I love it so far. I think I'm going to end up liking it more than The Mothers. I think it's so good and so interesting and just a lot to think about.
That's what I said too. I mean, I loved The Mothers, but The Vanishing Half even blew me away even more.
Yeah.
We'll do a whole episode on it, I think, soon. Maybe once you're done, Kelly, then we can.
Yeah.
We'll work, maybe a bonus app.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, why not?
Lucky listeners. Well, I'm actually reading 2 books right now. They're both romances. So I guess I'm just in the mood for a light romance. So I'm halfway through The Boyfriend Project by Farah Rashan. And it's so cute. It is about a woman, her name's Samaya, and she gets on this viral video. She and 2 other women all end up realizing through Twitter, this woman is live tweeting a bad date. And through this live tweet thread, Samaya's like, wait, this is the guy I've been seeing. So, and then he's also been 3-timing them. There's 3 women all dating the same guy. They all see this Twitter thread. So the 2 women that he's not with at the moment go down to the restaurant and confront him. It's caught on film on a video phone and goes viral. So she's like, oh no, now what? But the 3 of them end up forming this really cool friendship. They all really like each other. And so they say, we're going to have a pact. We're not going to date men for 6 months. We're just going to focus on doing what we want to do or bettering ourselves or furthering our careers. And then, of course, she meets a man at work and he has his own secrets. And it's just really fun and sexy. And I'm loving it so far. And then I'm almost finished with One to Watch, which is by, oh gosh, I can't remember the author's name.
Oh, Kate Stayman London.
Thank you.
It's holding my phone up. I'm looking right at it.
One to Watch by Kate Stayman London, and it's basically a parody, or not parody, but it's based on a show, The Bachelorette. Ever heard of it? The main character, B, she's a plus-size Instagram model, and she ends up getting cast as the lead, and so it talks a lot about body positivity. It feels almost like a Jennifer Weiner book, for sure. And I'm enjoying it. It's a lot. It's more intersectional than I thought it would be. And at first I was a little worried it was going to be like The Bachelor, the show, it's very whitewashed. There's no body diversity. So book does touch upon that, but it also talks a bit more about race than the show does. So that's good. So yeah, that's one to watch by Kate Staying in London.
Yes.
I just finished that yesterday. I loved it so much.
It's a quick read.
Yes.
Both that one and The Boyfriend Project, I'm kind of going back and forth. They're both really quick, fun reads. So yeah.
So right now we have renamed our book news segment to Did You Hear About? And I'm gonna go first because yesterday, or no, I guess Friday, I found out that Elijah Cummings, who is or was a Baltimore congressman, he died recently, and very, I guess pretty suddenly. I don't think most people knew that he was sick. But in September, a memoir is being released posthumously, and it's called We're Better Than This, and I'm so excited for it. I was approved for it on Edelweiss, which is like NetGalley, and I cannot wait to read it. I had so much respect for him. He is, I'm gonna say he is a hero, and I'm excited that his influence will continue even though he's gone.
I'm so happy he had written so much that this can be published. People who are heroes, just keep a journal so that we may hear from you.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's I can't wait. It's coming out the day before my birthday.
I will make a note of that. Rachel, I'm calling dibs. I got this one.
Okay.
So Rachel, what do you have?
So I have an exciting piece of news. So did you hear about Julie Murphy, author of Dumplin', which is a really popular YA novel about a plus-size girl entering her town's beauty pageant, annual beauty pageant, and it was made into a Netflix movie, and it has a sequel called Puddin', which is even better than the first one in my opinion. And now she's coming out with a third book in the series called Pumpkin. And
so happy.
I can't wait. So I don't really know anything about it. There's not really much of a synopsis available that I could find, but it does have a publishing date of May 4th, 2021. So we have to wait 10 months. I know, 10 months away, which seems like forever, but I'm sure we'll go by very fast. And so
I did hear about this, and I heard two things about it. One is that the main character is a boy. Yes. And that it's got a prom theme. So
I did hear about the prom theme. That's the one thing I knew about it. Oh, I'm so excited.
Oh, cannot wait.
No, I love her books. I posted it on our Instagram and had a gif of someone dancing like a dork, as I probably was at my prom, and she saw the story and didn't comment, and I was like, ah. That's very exciting. Okay, did you hear about this? There is now an alternative to Goodreads. So it's called
About Time.
Yeah, right? Goodreads, could you not be so beige, is what I would say to them. It's just, there's a lot of stuff about Goodreads I don't love. It doesn't allow you to do half-star ratings. It's not a very attractive looking website. There's a lot of people that will go on and just give really low ratings.
Yeah.
Kind of out of spite, I feel like. So it's just, but it's great because you can catalog the books you've read and you can keep track of things, you can write reviews. So there's a lot of good things about it, but this is an alternative. It's called the Story Graph, and it's still in beta, but I checked it out and it does seem like the face is going to be much nicer. I was able to export my Goodreads library. It's still importing, so they said it might take a few days because they're working on it. But I'm excited to see what happens with it. It does look like it might be a good alternative, especially because you can just download your Goodreads and then upload it to Storygraph. So if the app comes out and it's, good, then it might be a true alternative to Goodreads. Because so far, and Goodreads is connected to Amazon. And so if you're like me and you're trying to disengage as much as possible from ordering everything on Amazon, I feel like I just default to Amazon all the time because it's so easy, but it's good to support other businesses, right? So that
Right, yeah.
we're not just lining Jeff Bezos' pocket all the
Yeah.
time. So I think this could be a good alternative, and I'm excited to see what happens. So I think everyone should, if you use Goodreads, just check this out as well and see what happens. It's gonna not be perfect right now, right? Like I can't figure out how to follow people. I haven't worked all of that out yet, but to be determined. So I will keep you all posted how it goes.
Awesome.
Great. Okay, so we're doing, what you should read a little bit differently today. Instead of all recommending something different, we're all recommending the same book to all of you. Yes. So, Julia, do you want to say what the book is that we're recommending?
Yeah, so you know what you should read? Miracle Creek by Angie Kim.
Yay.
Yes. So we read this book for book club, and it is great. I would say it's a courtroom drama, and it's set in a small town in Virginia, and there are a bunch of different character point of views in this book, and basically it starts off with a literal bang. So there is something called Miracle Submarine, which is basically a oxygen chamber that is used to treat different medical conditions from, they say it can help kids with autism. They say it can help you if you are experiencing infertility. So it's sort of purporting to be kind of an alternative style treatment. And there are these people that go and they sit in the tank or the chamber, the submarine, if you will, for about an hour every day. And in the beginning of the book, there are people in the chamber and there's an explosion and 2 people die and more are injured. And so it starts off with that, and then it goes forward in time to the courtroom, to the court case. And the woman of one of the children that was in the chamber at the time is on trial. They're accusing her of setting a fire that caused this explosion. And so then it jumps around to different points of view. And you kind of start to see that everyone who was there that day or who is connected in some way has some sort of secret. And so it's a mystery until the end when you figure out who did it. But the way that Angie Kim just weaves together so many different themes in this book, I'm really excited to talk to her about it. We're going to have her on in just a few minutes, but she does it so seamlessly, and it's just so interesting the way that she wove everything together, I think.
Yeah. Sorry. I love that it's basically, no matter what you like to read, there is something in this book for you. Like it's very literary. If you're generally turned off by the phrase courtroom drama, it's not like that. Like it's not John Grisham. It's not, whatever you're thinking. It's just, it's hard to compare to anything else because it's just its own perfect little thing. Everything about it is masterful. And I think a lot of times when there are multiple perspectives, sometimes they all sound the same, or you can't necessarily tell who's narrating which part. And I didn't have that problem at all with this. It's just, and for a debut novel, that's pretty much unheard of, I would say. So it's definitely understandable why it's been winning all these awards.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I agree. I feel like it's just one of those books that is so unique in its storytelling, and it has such vivid characters that have so many different facets to them. It's one of those books that sticks with you. It definitely has stuck with me since I read it. I think about it a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about with it. And you're right, it's not your typical courtroom drama. It's definitely a very unique way of writing a book like this. And I just think it's beautifully done, and I can't wait to see what she writes next. You know, I debut novel, and it was so good. So I know we're all really excited to see what else she writes in the future. So with that, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to have our interview with author Angie Kim. And we are back, and we are joined by author Angie Kim. Hi, Angie. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. We're so excited to have you. And this is actually not the first time that we have all met each other.
Yay.
You actually to have dinner with our book club. I think it was last year, right?
It was last year. It was right after I was coming from a book event in Maryland, and I was like, well, as long as I'm in Maryland anyway, I'll drive out to meet you guys, and it was such a good dinner, remember? But the part of Maryland where I was like an hour from where you guys were, so I felt a little bit like an idiot for having thought of that, but the dinner was totally worth the drive. It was so good.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, I feel like it was just the coincidence was on our side. And Kelly, I think you were the one who actually set it up, right?
Yes, I have this thing in my head where it's like, of course, everyone wants to come to our book club and not to our podcast because we are a delightful group of people.
You are a delightful group of people, and we also had the special guest, right? The mom was there, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Mom, Rachel's mom.
It was your mom, right? Okay.
Yeah, that was a great night. And shout out to the food market in Baltimore where we had dinner. It was a really good dinner.
Yes.
It was so good. And I remember I got such an amazing parking spot, like right out front.
Remember the days where that was something?
Yes, when it was actually a challenge to get parking spots. You're right. Like you probably can easily get parking spots anywhere now.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Things have definitely changed.
Yes, things have definitely changed. And now, since then, your book is out in paperback.
Yes.
Kelly, I think you were going to start us off with a few questions.
Yes. Of course, obviously, we need to start with what you're reading.
What I'm reading right now, I am rereading Severance by Ling Ma. I don't know if have you guys read that? Yes, you're all nodding your heads. Oh, I wish it weren't such a spoiler. Maybe after the Zoom call is over, we can stay on and we can discuss that ending, and we can discuss all of our theories about what happens in the ending. So actually, her editor is my editor, Ling Ma's editor. We share the same editor, and so I was trying to get my editor to spill the beans, and she claims not to remember exactly. So it's ridiculous. But in any case, for those who haven't read it, Severance is an amazing, amazing book, and it's got a lot of sort of dystopian elements to it, and it's really appropriate to read, I feel like, right now, because it's actually based on actually, I believe it's a fungus, but, an infection that really spreads throughout, and it's actually something that originates from China. So it has a lot of similarities, and it's really about a woman who is in New York, and she's probably one of the few people who have survived and who is just sort of like wandering around and living in New York. And so there are lots of haunting images of sort of this very once bustling city and what happens when all the people are gone, which I think is really chilling. And so something that I love about the imagery of that. So that's the thing that I am rereading at this moment.
I read that last year, and it does seem like a appropriate book to be reading right now, especially because of all the themes. Do you know if do you have any insider info on if there's a sequel coming out or another book from Ling Ma?
I don't know about I would highly doubt that there would be a sequel on that. But I'm sure that she's working on a new novel. But that's an excellent question to ask. I will definitely have to ask it. And then the other thing that I'm reading right now is The Secrets We Kept by Laura Prescott. Have you guys read that one? It was I think it was a Reese Witherspoon pick last year, and she's
It's the
a friend.
Spies, right? The
It's what?
Spies.
Yeah,
The
it's about spies.
Connect.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
did
it's
read
about.
that.
You did? Didn't you?
Yeah.
Did you love it? It's
I
good,
did.
right?
Yeah, it was so fun.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. So it is Laura Prescott's debut novel, and she and I are we met at panels at book festivals and things like that. So we've become friends, and she asked me to be her conversation partner for her paperback launch, which is this virtual event this Tuesday, and she lives in Austin. So it's at Book People. And so I am reading that right now, and it is so good. It's about Dr. Zhivago, and it's about Pasternak's, there are several different strands, but the one strand is like in Russia or in the Soviet Union, with Pasternak actually writing it and then trying to get it published and being banned in the USSR. And then at the same time, over in the US, in the CIA, there are all these women spies who are working to try to get this book back into, actually published and into Soviet hands in order, almost as a propaganda thing to say, the Soviet people, communism is bad because it's suppressing works like this that you guys need to be, treasuring instead of suppressing. And so it's really just this, it's got a thriller element to it. It's just gorgeous character work about some of these historical fiction, types of people who actually existed in real life. Really, really fun.
Great.
Kind of related to what we were discussing earlier, I know things have changed a lot in terms of getting a parking spot and getting to do things and not getting to do things. But how have your reading and writing lives changed during the pandemic, if at all?
Oh, God, it's completely changed. So reading for the longest time, I could not read because I think I was so distracted. I was just reading stuff on my phone. My phone was just losing battery power by 11 a.m., because I was just reading article after article, statistical analysis after statistical analysis, things like that. And I wasn't actually able to focus on fiction. And then I started with short stories. I was a judge for AWP Fiction Prize. And so for that, I read 155 short stories.
Wow.
And I know I'm looking at your faces, and it was actually wonderful. I couldn't believe how good the stories were and how many talented writers there are out there. And going through that really forced me to get back in. When I was facing deadlines, I was like, okay, I have to, chug along and read all of these stories. And it just made me realize how much I do love stories and how valuable fiction can be for getting away from sort of our day-to-day lives. And also, I think at the same time, I started getting a little bit sick of reading about COVID and the latest, atrocity from Trump and all of that sort of stuff. And then I started reading a lot more fiction and stories and essays about Black Lives Matter, just because I feel like that's one of the best ways to sort of learn about, others' experiences is through reading. And all of those things conspire to come together to sort of get me out of my reading rut. And so now I'm able to sort of read a lot more. And then as far as writing is concerned, for a while, the beginning of the pandemic and the quarantine period was supposed to be my paperback tour. And so even though the tour itself was canceled and all of the in-person events were canceled, a lot of them were moved online. And then I started having a lot more online events because I was telling all the libraries and bookstores, the indie bookstores, that I would do events with them. And those have been so good for the indie bookstores to sort of get to know the booksellers and them getting to know the authors, and then really using that as a way of reaching out to the customers and keeping them connected and more importantly, getting the customers to actually buy the books. And so I've been doing so many of those events. And so it's only very recently, like the last couple of weeks, that I stopped doing sort of daily events, and now I'm having some free days and free nights, which has been nice. And one thing that I've done for writing, for any writers out there, that I highly recommend is some friends of mine who are writers invited me to join this writing Zoom, the silent writing Zoom. And so we go on together like every morning at 10 a.m. and we're on this group Zoom and we chat for a little bit. But then, everybody mutes, but we're all on the screen still. And then we write. And it's just like a way of keeping ourselves accountable. So it's sort of meant to be the virtual equivalent to going to, the library and sort of working in a silent room together or something like that, where you feel like, okay, you're going somewhere. So it's not just like you can't really procrastinate as much because you feel like the, judgeful eyes of everybody sort of, and you feel ashamed if you don't actually do what you're supposed to. So it's just like a good forcing mechanism. So I've actually been writing every day. So I'm really excited about that.
That's such a great idea, the writing Zooms.
I love it. It's so, so great. I don't know that I could have actually gotten any progress done on my next novel that I'm working on if it weren't for that. So
that's great.
I feel like I need something similar, like maybe for 3 or 4 hours, where it's like, this is my reading time. And if I pick up my phone, somebody yells at me, like, no.
Yeah. You know what? There is something like that. It's I did a huge book club event. It was it was so fun, and it's called the Silent Book Club. Have you heard of this? SBC, and they have chapters. Yeah, they have I think it may have started in California, and the national chapter is huge, but they now have local chapters all over the place. And so I'm not sure if they're doing like a silent Zoom like, we're doing with a writing, but it's called the Silent Book Club, and it's people like getting together, and it's like basically like a book club, except they're not discussing the books. They're just getting together and they're reading silently together. And I think it's a lot of introverts who are sort of getting together. So, and then we actually ended, I think my book event with them was the first like actual book club discussion, and certainly like the first one with an author. So it was really, really fun, and I loved it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
But you mentioned last year when we saw you that you had all these different careers that kind of led you to where you are now. So what else have you done, and how did that make you want to become a writer?
Sure. So in order, my first career was being a trial lawyer. And then after that, I was a management consultant at McKinsey. And I got sort of like a mini MBA training through there, so got my entree into the business world. The third thing I did was I left McKinsey with some of my friends who were also there, and we formed a .com. So we had a company and we grew it to like 450 employees and got lots of fun funding. We were about to IPO, and then the market crashed. And so we were forced to sell it. And the month that we ended up selling our business and the sale ended up going through was the same month that I had my first baby. And so it was sort of like, I'm going to stay at home. And I was a stay-at-home mom. I've been basically a stay-at-home mom ever since then. And my oldest child is like now 18 years old. So that's been a long, long time. And I would say it's that fourth job, the fourth career of being a stay-at-home mom that really led me to being a writer. Of course, like in all of the other careers that I've had, I did writing. But, like professional writing, legal writing. And even though there was an element of storytelling in courtroom work, in the sense that when you're doing an opening statement or, writing a brief to a judge, you have to sort of explain the case. So you're telling a story. But there was no like fiction writing, or hopefully, right? You hope that what you're writing isn't fiction when you're in the courtroom. But I think it was just the sort of intensity of emotions as a mom. I have 3 boys, and all 3 are fine now. But as babies and toddlers, they all had weird medical mystery stuff happen to them. And so I had a lot of sort of moments of angst. I had lots of moments of frustration, logistical awfulness dealing with insurance companies and hospitals, as well as just all of the emotional upheaval of dealing with illnesses and disabilities and things like that for kids. And so based on that experience, I think I reached a moment and I wrote about it actually for the Washington Post, where I just broke down crying in the middle of the aisle of my local Whole Foods here in Northern Virginia. And I think that's like the first line of the article is I became a writer because I cried in Whole Foods or something like that. And it's just like about the frustration of that emotion and how I actually ran into a friend of mine at that Whole Foods that day, and just the act of sort of opening up and telling my story and being able to sort of vocalize and verbalize all the things that I was feeling just made me feel better. It's that cathartic feeling. And so starting that night, I started actually writing instead of doing all of the work that I was supposed to and, cleaning up the kitchen and making food from scratch and things like that I was supposed to be doing. Instead, I just put all of that aside and I started writing. And that was really the beginning of my writing journey as, a mother. And then even though I started with essays, for that catharsis, my husband pointed out that, hey, there are issues with medical privacy and our kids and future insurability and all sorts of things. And this is not just your story, it's our family's story. And the kids are so little that it's really, we have to think about and worry about whether they're actually able to meaningfully give consent for their part of the story to be told. And so he was like, why not try fiction? And I was like, fiction? What? I don't know how to write fiction. And so I started taking workshops, started with short stories, and then, after I got, I started submitting them and getting them published and winning some awards and things like that, that I sort of said, okay, I have found something that I love. This is the thing that I have been searching for as I've been bopping around from career to career, job to job. This is what I want, like the thing that makes me happy on both a day-to-day basis and when you step back and am I proud of what I'm doing? Am I satisfied with what I'm doing? And fiction writing gave me sort of both of those.
Yeah, I mean, we were going to, you sort of already mentioned this, but we were going to ask about how the themes in the book relate to your personal experiences. And it sounds like you put a lot of your life and your personal experiences into the book.
Yeah, I mean, with Miracle Creek being my debut, people definitely say, they warn you, like you are going to be tempted to put a lot of your own life into your first book. And I think a lot of people's first books reflect that, and that's definitely the case for me. Yeah, there's the thread of my trial law experience. That's, of course, reflected in the book because it's a courtroom drama. And even though I didn't like being a lawyer, as you can tell from the fact that I, left it so early on, I did love being in the courtroom. That was the one element of being a lawyer that I loved. And so I was really glad to be able to revisit that as I was writing the novel. And so there was that element. And then there's the other element of that it's not a career-related one, but I am a Korean immigrant. I moved here from Seoul, South Korea, to the Baltimore area when I was 11. And so that experience and that feeling of displacement and that feeling of losing one's sense of the family and, not knowing how to speak the language and what that does to you when you can't understand or speak, in a new land. All of those types of feelings and experiences are sort of baked into the novel, as the novel does feature a family that is a recent Korean immigrant family. And so that family is definitely based on mine. And then the final strand of my life that's in the novel is probably the most foundational one, which is my parenting experience of being the mom of a child who did this weird medical experimental thing called HBOT, or hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And so one of my kids, when he was 4 years old, was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which just wouldn't respond to anything. And so he's 4, he's like losing weight, and he's, crying and throwing up after meals. And so when that happens, I think, your heart breaks for this little guy, a 4-year-old, and you become willing to sort of try anything. And one of my friends had heard about this group HBOT chamber. It's a pressurized chamber that you enter, and it's sealed in, and then you breathe in pure oxygen. And she had heard about this one that was coming to our neighborhood that was going to be more affordable than sort of the ones that are in hospitals, just because it is a group chamber. And so she told me about it, and she told me about some research she had found. She had just come across. She had a child with autism, and she was doing it for that, but she had come across some research paper saying that this was good for ulcerative colitis. And would I be interested? And so we sort of jumped at the chance. And I remember the first time we saw it, and my son was like, "Look, it looks like a submarine." I told you guys the story already, but and because we had just watched the Beatles' Yellow Submarine for family movie night, and so we called it, and except that our submarine was blue. It was painted blue, not yellow, so we called it our blue submarine. And so we did these dives, these hour-long sessions with other families, with kids with autism and cerebral palsy who were also in there at the same time. And so we got to really know each other, and I really went back to that experience in coming up with the plot line of this and the premise of this novel. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the most amazing things is how all of these different themes tie together so seamlessly. You have the trial, you have the immigration story, you have the HBOT and the parenting aspect. Did you know going into writing this novel that you wanted to tie all those things together, or did those themes sort of naturally start to emerge during the writing process?
I don't think theme is anything that I particularly thought about, but as I thought about the situation that I wanted to set up, I knew that I wanted to do a novel with an HBOT chamber that brought together a whole bunch of, different types of families. And so I knew that, and I knew that I wanted to explore sort of this idea of the hierarchy of disabilities, relativity of happiness, and also just parenting sacrifices, all of those types of themes. And I was talking about this with a friend of mine at Politics and Prose in DC, which is sort of my local, there's a cafe downstairs, and I was talking about it with a friend of mine who had written a couple of novels of his own, and we were in the same writing group. And I said, well, I'm either going to write that novel, or I might write this other novel, which is based on my immigrant family experience of and I was going to call it The Silent Grocer. And it was, basically about a very stern, not very talkative Korean immigrant who runs a grocery store in downtown Baltimore, much like the one that my parents ran. And he said, well, why don't you combine them? And I was like, what? And he said, make the Korean immigrant family the owner. Why wouldn't they own it? Because I had been telling him how, like, HBOT is something that I had discovered, like, my parents know about, and Koreans do it, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but really? Like, wouldn't that be just so busy? Like, how am I going to fit all those things together? And he was like, well, they can just be, side characters or whatever. And so at first I thought they might be side characters, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized so many of these experiences are parallel, because the parents, as immigrants, they're going through the same parenting, the extreme parenting sacrifices that the parents of these kids who are special needs and who have medical issues are going through at the same time. And sort of to do a compare and contrast, parallels in their lives and how they differ and how they're the same, it seemed to me much more plausible that these people would come together and they would start to support each other. Just seeing the parallels in their lives. So I guess in that sense, yes, it is a similar theme that sort of all came together. But it really was like just this, connection that a friend of mine that I happened to be talking about it to, came up with. So I'm really indebted to him,
And it works so well together. And I know every author writes differently, and some authors will really outline everything, and others will kind of go more, free form. Did you write, because there are so many different points of view in the novel, did you write each point of view chronologically, or did you write one character's perspective and then move on to another, or some combination of the two?
Yeah, so for Miracle Creek, I did not plan stuff out. I tried to, but so it's not that I didn't try. I desperately would have loved to have an outline of everything. That's just not how my brain seemed to work for that. So I tried to do like an outline, but I had no idea. Like, I just felt like before I really got into it and got to know these characters, and I did do a lot of like free writing, of like 6 months of free writing by hand, even before I even started writing the first scene or the first words of the novel. But even with that, I still felt like until I actually went through the years of, exploring all these characters, and in that moment, I really had no idea who set the fire. So this was really very concerning, because I was just like, what happens if I come to the end of this mystery and I still can't figure out who set the fire? And so it was, but I did have this document that I had open. It was one of the first documents that I wrote to myself. It was like a letter to myself, and it was called This Is Not a Novel. And I was like, this is not a novel. This is not a real book. Like, this will probably never be a book. This will probably just be, like my this will be my training, like teaching myself how to write a novel. Like a lot of writers do that. They write one novel and then they like put it away in a drawer and never look at it again because it's, because they don't like it. And I thought this is going to be that for me. And I'm going to have to write a bad novel first and then give up on it before I can write, my real novel. So this is not my real novel. And I think that gave me the psychological freedom to just be like, okay, I have no idea who set the fire. I have no idea if I'm ever going to find out or if it's going to be satisfying or anything like that. But I'm just going to just do it for practice. This is my practice novel. And so I did it that way. And for this particular novel, and I think this is the way that I write in general, I have to write in order. I am not able, even if I wanted to. I think it sounds amazing to be able to say, okay, I have 7 POV characters in this novel, which, I have 7 point of view characters in Miracle Creek. It would have been amazing if I could have said, okay, all chapters from Matt's perspective, I'm going to write all in one fell swoop. And maybe if I had a detailed outline, I could have done that, and that would have been great because then I could have kept the voice consistent and, really gotten inside his head for 4 months or 5 months or whatever and just knocked them all out. I just can't do it that way. I write one paragraph at a time, and I can't move on to the second paragraph until I'm satisfied with the first paragraph. Not to say that, I'm never going to revise them because I've revised for years, but I don't know why. I just can't build anything on top without having polished the one on the bottom layer, which I think is a bad way to write, and it's not really advisable because it takes so frigging long. And so I don't really advise this. However, it's just the way that I am as a writer, and I just can't move on until I love it. So, so what can you do? Yeah.
Do you have a favorite character that, who is your favorite character to write?
Oh, to write. So I think a couple of different reactions to that. So my favorite character in my novel is probably Shannon, who is the defense lawyer, just because it was really fun to write her lines and what she was doing in court, because she's so badass, and I love badass women lawyers because I feel like there are so few, and so many badass lawyers in movies and TV are guys, and I just sort of want to go why can't there be a badass woman? And also she's not your sort of typical, gorgeous, beautiful blonde or whatever. She's just sort of plain and a little frumpy. So I just love her. Having said that, I did not write any chapters from her perspective. So the characters from whose perspective I had most fun writing is probably Matt, who is sort of a despicable character by the end. But when I started writing, again, because I didn't plan stuff out, so I didn't really know what would happen, I really liked him in the beginning. I thought he was really sympathetic, and he was sort of funny, and because he's so different from me, and he's so different from anyone I know, he's probably one of the few characters that's not even a composite of people that I know in real life. He's just totally made from, cut from a whole cloth, completely. So I think it was really fun to come up with this guy and not feel in any way confined by any preconceived notions that I had of him. Having said that, by the end of the book, I was disgusted by him and very annoyed by him, and and then opposite from that, Young, who is our main protagonist, who begins and ends the novel, she's the Korean immigrant mother, and she really annoyed me in the beginning. She is just so passive and such the typical, like, the good, trying to be good Korean wife and mother who is, really trying to be deferential to the man and to all men, and it just really upsets me. So when people are like that, and I don't like that in people that I know. I don't like that aspect in people I know. So I didn't like her, and I was actually thinking halfway through the novel that maybe I had to either cut her out or just like not make her the main protagonist because she was annoying me so much. But then by the end, she really came together and pulled, her stuff together. So it's funny how like you can ask a simple question like, who's your favorite character? And, there are so many different, changes and evolutions and stuff that I just gave you this like 45-minute answer. So sorry about that.
No, that was great. And I was thinking a lot about Young because I think she might be my favorite character. Just
Yeah.
for the reasons you said, she definitely has a lot of layers to her. And it's like when we learn about sort of her life in Korea and when she met Pak and they were from totally different class levels. And and I think you and I discussed this at the book club last year, but just how that played a role in her deference and her submissiveness to her husband and
yes,
not wanting to sort of, remind him of the fact that she grew up wealthy and he did not.
Right. Right. And that she's possibly more educated than he is and did, a little bit better in school maybe, all of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like she wanted to protect his ego, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And she worried that he was feeling emasculated and and she also came to the U.S. earlier, than he did, like 4 years earlier than he did. So she had a lot more experience with American culture and, knowledge and all those things. And I think she felt like, I don't want to do anything to make him feel even more isolated and insecure than he already must feel. So it came from a good place, but still, it was still, I think, an annoying tendency that she had in the beginning when she would just suppress what, it was like her daughter says to her, you have a voice, why can't you use it? And she didn't. She really forced herself not to for the longest time. And I think that's one of the most frustrating things, not only in Miracle Creek, but in any novel that you see, is like when you see people and you feel like there's so many problems that are being caused by these characters not saying what's on their mind and not being honest. You just want to hit them over the head, right? And you just want to go, just do something. Just say it, and all this will be over. All your problems will be over.
So true. Wow. I mean, I love the book so much, and I'm really looking forward to reading something else by you. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on and what your next book is about, and when can we read it, please?
Yes. I have no idea when you can read it because I'm still in that pre-writing stage. But I do know, at least I think this is what it's going to be called. It's going to be called Happiness Quotient, and it's about a preteen boy who is nonverbal, and he has apraxia and autism, and he is taking a walk in the beginning of the novel with his father, who's the primary caregiver, and only the boy returns home. And because he's nonverbal, he can't tell the family or the authorities what happened to the father on the walk. And his older siblings, who are fraternal twins, like 17 and 18, about to be high school seniors, they become obsessed with trying to use the new assistive communication therapies and techniques and technologies to help him to find his voice and to hopefully, give some clues as to what happened.
That sounds
so good.
I can't wait.
Thank you. Yeah, I have, I think my agent can't really wait for me to give her something either.
Agree.
I will be pre-ordering it.
No question. Well, thank you for that. And we always like to ask our guests to tell us what we should read. So we're wondering if you have a book recommendation for us. Tell us what we should read.
Yeah, sure. So, the two that I mentioned in the beginning are definitely, how long of a list do you want, do you think? I have so many. I'm looking at my bookshelf right now.
Go ahead and toss out a few, that's fine.
Yeah, okay, so definitely those two. Those two are so, so amazing. One that I love recently is The Book of V by Anna Solomon. I don't know if you guys have heard about that. It's sort of similar in structure to The Hours by Michael Cunningham, and it's an exploration of sort of motherhood and female power, powerlessness, sexuality, all those things, by telling us in juxtaposing three women throughout, like everyone from the biblical times all the way to the modern time. So three women. So there is that. What else can I tell you about? I'm looking at my. I know one that I just finished very, very recently is The River by Peter Heller, which is an amazing, amazing book. Peter Heller has the Dog of Stars. I don't know if you guys remember that book. But it's a wonderful, wonderful book. And then I'll mention this because I just recently recommended it to one of my silent writing Zoom friends, writer friends, and she loved it so much. I think she was like 50 pages into it, and she was like, I think this might be my favorite book of all time. It's Tim O'Brien's In the Lake of the Woods, which is a really unconventional type of mystery, very experimental structure with lots of like evidence and hypotheses. It starts off with a wife who goes missing, just disappears one day, and there are so many different like reasons she could have disappeared. Everything from she just ran away with her lover, if she had one, who knows, to maybe he murdered her in the middle of the night. So there are lots of clues, and it's Tim O'Brien's work is always, he's the one who always writes a lot about the Vietnam War, so there's a lot of that in there. I loved My Dark Vanessa. So that was a really, really great one. And that's just trigger warnings. It's about a high school teacher and his longtime affair with a woman who is now grown up and dealing with the Me Too movement and the allegations against him and things like that. So there's a lot, and he basically gave her Lolita as like part of his seduction. So there's a lot of Lolita stuff in there, and it's so good, but so disturbing, so highly disturbing. So definitely trigger warnings for that. All right, I think those are probably good, right? I could go on for like an hour.
The Book of V has been on my list. I definitely want to hear. But those all sound great.
Yeah, the Book of V is so good. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Angie, for joining us today. Do you have anything to plug? Do you want to plug your social media or where people find you?
Oh, sure. I'm taking a little bit of a social media break for now. Or I'm not, it's not really a break, but I'm trying to do less like stuff on it so that I can actually focus on focus on writing. But my social media, having said that, I'm on Twitter at Angie Kim Writer, and I'm probably most active on Instagram at Angie. What is my title? Oh, it's Angie Kim ASK. Those are Ask. Angie Kim Ask. Those are my initials. So those are sort of my social media things, and my website, which I haven't updated in like 12 months, is angiekimbooks.com. I'm really not doing a good job plugging myself from these perspectives, am I?
We'll send people to you and to your book, no problem.
Yeah. But yes, please, the paperback edition of Miracle Creek, I'm really, really happy about, because even for those of you who like have a hard copy or whatever, what's fun about the paperback edition is that we added a cast of characters in the beginning. So there's that, and then there's also like an interview with my editor. It's a transcript. It's like an edited transcript of an interview that we included at the end of the audiobook. So that has a lot of, fun threads about the editing process and things like that. She complains about certain things. I complain about certain things. It's very fun. So those are all in the paperback, which I think is really fun.
Now I have to get that too. And we all have our hardcovers here. So
yeah, yay! Thank you. Love it.
Cool. Well, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
So much fun, and thank you so much. I loved our dinner so much, and talking about theater and all of those things, and meeting your mom and tell her I said hi, and yeah, and that was just such an amazing dinner, and it's just good memories like that of times when we could be together and hug and drink and all the share food. That just seems like such a weird alien time, but so I've become so wistful of times like that. So it's good to remember that we had that not that long ago, right? So
yeah, and someday again we will.
Definitely, we will. Yeah.
Right. Well, thanks so much, Angie, and
thank you.
And thanks again.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so if you want to follow us on social media, you can find us at WYSR_podcast on Twitter and Instagram. And you can email us at whatyoushouldreadpodcast@gmail.com. And just get a hold of us. Tell us what you're reading. Tell us what we should read. Ask us what you should read, and we can do a recommendation for you on one of the podcast episodes. And we'd love to hear from you. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and anywhere where you're listening. Give us a like or a thumbs up if you're on YouTube. We'd really appreciate the feedback.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for listening. Thank you again to Angie Kim for joining us today. And now you know what you should read.
You're welcome.
It's Miracle Creek. You should read Miracle Creek.
I mean, you really should. I don't know how many times we have to say it.
Do it.
Bye, everyone.